Hey everybody, hope you're doing well, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms who may be watching this. Um, and students, if you have not told your mom or your grandma happy Mother's Day, as soon as this is over, go do it. You'll thank me later. But I'm going to try to be really brief. This is my third take, and I've realized I am way too long-winded. So I'm going to try to keep this brief and tight, and so I'm just going to jump into a few announcements, and we're just going to jump into this message. So first, super disappointed, and I think most of y'all know, but Great Escape has been canceled for this year. Just with everything going on and us leaving for camp on June 7th, it was just going to be a little too soon, and the Great Escape and Lee University both made this decision. So we're going to be looking for some other fun activities that we can do for the middle schoolers later in the summer, so don't worry, we have some cool things that we're going to be working on and getting together for you. And for high schoolers, we are still on for Fun in the Sun. I'll be sending out some details about that over the next few weeks, and we're still going to be hoping and praying that we are able to go on that trip. But I'll also be sending out some stuff for middle school and high school about when we can start gathering back together again for some of our summer programming. And so last week we talked about this idea of habits and how, almost 43% of our day is determined by habits. 43% of the things that we do each day are habits. And so habits are a big part of our daily lives. And we also talked about how direction will always take us to the destination. We're thinking about a destination of who we want to be or maybe what we want to do. And I hope that a destination for many of y'all is to be closer with Jesus. So the direction we walk, the path that we walk down, is going to take us towards that destination. Not good intentions and not how quickly we try to do things, but instead it's the direction that we walk. And we talked about how habits help take us in a direction. Habits are going to inform the direction that we walk. And so they're really important for us to think about our habits that we have in our lives, because they're going to directly affect the destination that we go towards. And so last week we challenged you to think, well, what's your destination? Who do you want to be? What's the legacy you want to leave behind, and where do you want to go? And we have to think about, what is it going to take for us to get there? And so this week we're going to talk about our first habit. And the habit we're talking about this week is solitude and silence. Finding time and places where we can find solitude and silence. And this habit is really going to help prepare us for the next two habits that we talk about, the next two disciplines you could think about, of prayer and scripture reading. Because it's really hard to do prayer and scripture reading unless we have a place of solitude. And so I want you to begin to think about, what are some of the ways and places that you like to go in order to connect with God? That's going to help maybe get you started in finding a place where you can find some solitude and silence. And we also have to look at, well, why do we even need this? Is it really that important? And we can go to Jesus to see. And so we're going to see that Jesus begins his ministry by spending the first 40 days of his before his ministry alone in the wilderness. We see this in Mark chapter 1, verse 13. And then at the end of this time, before he goes out again, he retreats back into silence. And it says in Mark 1, verse 35, "And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed." And before he selected the 12 disciples, we see in Luke chapter 6, verse 12, that he spent all night in prayer and solitude. Or we see after he did a big miracle and he preached to a ton of people and the feeding of the 5,000 and that whole story, that after that he went and found solitude. Or maybe if you need some more things, as people began to hear about him more and more, and as his fame began to spread from the healings that he was doing and from his preaching, we see, like in Luke chapter 5, that but he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. So this is something he did as he got more famous. And then before he went to Jerusalem for his last days on earth, in Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 through 9, it says that he went and found silence and solitude. And before he was arrested and executed in Matthew 26, it says that he went to the garden and he prayed and he talked to the Father. And so we see that when things got busy, Jesus sought solitude and silence. When Jesus became more famous, he sought solitude and silence. Before big decisions, Jesus would withdraw and seek solitude and silence. After working hard, Jesus would withdraw and seek solitude and silence. And in the morning and in the night, Jesus would withdraw and find silence and solitude. So this is obviously something that was important for Jesus to do in order for him to be healthy and connected to the Father. And so it's all that more important for us to do the same. And I say this not as someone who does this well. Like, this is probably the hardest habit and discipline for me to do, because I love to just move. And I'm one of those guys that thinks that, that if you're busy, then you're living life better, which is totally wrong and it's stupid. I'll just say that flat out, because a lot of times we just spend our life busy, moving, and that we never take time to seek silence and solitude so that we can connect to God in a deeper and richer way. It's kind of tied to this idea of Sabbath, where we rest and we recharge and we connect to God. And so, what are some of the challenges for us to seek silence and solitude? Well, I think the two main things are external noise. We have so many distractions. We're so busy. There's so many things going on around us that the external noise can keep us from finding solitude and silence. And then we also have internal noise. We have so much going on in our minds and our hearts that keep us from really slowing down and focusing in on Jesus. And so ways that we can combat these things is we can find a place. Maybe it's going for a run without your headphones, without music, and you can just find time to just be still, even while you're moving, and just focus your mind and your heart on Jesus and connect to Him. Maybe you have a spot outside. Maybe you take a walk in the woods. Maybe you have a bench somewhere. But you need to begin to think about what's a place that you can go in order to find solitude and silence. And another important thing is we've got to unplug and we've got to turn things off. And that might be really hard, but leaving your phone behind and turning off the television, maybe even turning off the music, and just spending time where you kind of center your heart and your mind to be totally focused to hear the voice of God. Because so often we feel like we can't hear God speaking, but we allow so many distractions in our lives. And finding solitude and silence is going to be a way for us to turn down the knob, the volume noise of the world around us, so that we can then hear the voice of God. And we hear the voice of God through Him speaking in prayer. And we're also going to hear it when we open His Word and we read the Scripture. And so this lesson and this habit on solitude and silence is really going to help set us up as we seek to hear God's voice through prayer and through Scripture reading that we're going to talk about over the next 2 weeks. And so I want to challenge you to find a place and find some time each day to be still and to get away and to leave your phone behind and to take a few moments to pray that God would still your heart and that He would still your mind, and then that maybe you would take some time to read His Word and to listen for His voice. And then to talk to Him about your concerns, your fears, your hopes, your anxieties, and all those things. And so next week we're going to talk about prayer, and then the last week we're going to talk about Scripture reading as healthy habits that are going to take us down a path towards a closer relationship with Jesus. So thanks for listening, and I hope you're doing well. And don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything that you need at all.